Welcome. William Corbett, poet from Boston and teacher here at Harvard, will be reading the English versions of Mr. Brodsky's poems. They will alternate, first the English version, then the original in Russian by Mr. Brodsky himself. Reading Joseph Brodsky's A Part of Speech, one cannot miss or fail to appreciate the breadth, the tone, and the formality of epic poetry throughout. The language is accurate, yet flows through as if it were written originally in English rather than another language. The subject matter, the poet's sensibility and concerns, his stories, I think, retain their admirable emotional resonance regardless of the time and place of origin. A Part of Speech is the second volume of poetry by Joseph Brodsky since he was exiled from his own country in 1972. I think it is extremely important that the poet assist and supervise his translators, especially where the musical content of a poem is at issue. There is enough evidence to indicate that this is the case with A Part of Speech. Furthermore, in one of the most crucial poems in this collection, which bears the title of the book itself, A Part of Speech, Mr. Brodsky went one more step further to do the entire translation by himself. In greeting Joseph Brodsky at Harvard, I thank you for coming to the reading and for allowing an exile to welcome an exile at home. A question and answer, a brief question and answer period will follow the reading instead of our usual wine and cheese session. Thank you very much.
6 years later, translated by Richard Wilbur. Okay. 6 years later, translated by Richard Wilbur. So long had life together been that now the 2nd of January fell again, on Tuesday, making her astonished brow lift like a windshield wiper in the rain, so that her misty sadness cleared and showed a cloudless distance waiting up the road. So long had life together been that once the snow began to fall, it seemed unending, that lest the flake should make her eyelids wince, I'd shield them with my hand, and they, pretending not to believe that cherishing of eyes, would beat against my palm like butterflies. So alien had all novelty become, that sleep's entanglements would put to shame whatever depths the analysts might plumb, that when my lips blew out the candle flame, her lips, fluttering from my shoulder, sought to join my own without another thought. So long had life together been that all that tattered brood of papered roses went, and a whole birch grove grew up upon the wall, and we had money by some accident, and tongue-like on the sea for 30 days the sunset threatened Turkey with its blaze. So long had life together been without books, chairs, utensils, only that ancient bed, that the triangle, before it came about, had been a perpendicular, the head of some acquaintance hovering above 2 points which had coalesced by love. So long had life together been that she and I, with our joint shadows, had composed a double door, a door which, even if we were lost in work or sleep, was always closed. Somehow its halves were split, and we went right through them into the future, into night.
6 лет спустя. Так долго вместе прожили, что вновь 2 января пришлось на вторник, что удивленно поднятая бровь, как со стекла автомобиля дворник с лица сгоняла смутную печаль, незамутненной оставляя даль. Так долго вместе прожили, что снег, коль выпадет, то думалось навеки, что дабы не зажмуривать и век, я прикрывал ладонью их и веки, не верить, что их пробуют спасти, метались там, как бабочки в горсти. Так чужды были всякой новизне, что тесные объятия во сне бесчестили любой психоанализ, что губы, припадавшие к плечу, с моими задувавшими свечу, не видя дел иных, соединялись. Так долго вместе прожили, что роз семейство на обшарпанных обоях сменилось целой рощей берез, и деньги появились у обоих, и 30 дней над морем языкат грозил пожаром Турции закат. Так долго вместе прожили без книг, без мебели, без утвари, на старом диванчике, что прежде чем возник, был треугольник перпендикуляром, восставленным знакомыми стаймя, над слившимися точками 2. Так долго вместе прожили мы с ней, что сделали из собственных теней мы дверь себе, работаешь ли, спишь ли, но створки не распахивались врозь, и мы прошли их, стало быть, насквозь, и черным ходом в будущее вышли.
Nature Morte. This is translated by George L. Klein. It's in 10 sections, and I'll pause briefly at the end of each one. People and things crowd in. Eyes can be bruised and hurt by people as well as things. Better to live in the dark. I sit on a wooden bench, watching the passers-by, sometimes whole families. I am fed up with the light. This is a winter month, first on the calendar. I shall begin to speak when I'm fed up with the dark. It's time. I shall now begin. It makes no difference with what, open mouth. It is better to speak, although I can also be mute. What then shall I talk about? Shall I talk about nothingness? Shall I talk about days, or nights, or people? No, only things, since people will surely die, all of them, as I shall. All talk is a barren trade, a writing on the wind's wall. My blood is very cold. Its cold is more withering than ice to the bottom streams. People are not my thing. I hate the look of them. Grafted to life's great tree, each face is firmly stuck and cannot be torn free. Something the wind, the mind abhors, shows in each face and form, something like flattery of persons quite unknown. Things are more pleasant. Their outsides are neither good nor evil, and their insides reveal neither good nor bad. The core of things is dry rot, dust, a wood borer, and brittle moth wings, Thin walls, uncomfortable to the hand. Dust. When you switch lights on, there's nothing but dust to see. That's true, even if the thing is sealed up hermetically. This ancient cabinet, outside as well as in, strangely reminds me of Paris's Notre Dame. Everything's dark within it. Dust mop or bishop's stole can't touch the dust of things. Things themselves, as a rule, don't try to purge or tame the dust of their own insides. Dust is the flesh of time, time's very flesh and blood. Lately, I often sleep during the daytime. My death, it would seem, is now trying and testing me, placing a mirror close to my still breathing lips, seeing if I can stand non-being in daylight. I do not move. These two thighs are like blocks of ice. Branched veins show blue against skin that is marble white. Summing their angles up, as a surprise to us, things drop away from man's world, a world made with words. Things do not move or stand. That's our delirium. Each thing's a space beyond which there can be no thing. A thing can be battered, burned, gutted, and broken up, thrown out, and yet the thing never will yell, "Oh, fuck." A tree, its shadow and earth pierced by clinging roots, interlaced monograms, clay and a clutch of rocks. Roots interweave and blend. Stones have their private mass, which frees them from the bond of normal rootedness. This stone is fixed. One can't move it or heave it out. Tree shadows catch a man like a fish in their net. A thing, its brown color, its blurry outline, twilight. Now there is nothing left, only a nature morte. Death will come and will find a body whose silent peace will reflect death's approach like any woman's face. Scythe, skull, and skeleton, an absurd pack of lies. Rather, death, when it comes, will have your own two eyes. Mary now speaks to Christ. Are you my son or God? You are nailed to the cross. Where lies my homeward road? Can I pass through my gate, not having understood? Are you dead or alive? Are you my son or God? Christ speaks to her in turn. Whether dead or alive, woman, it's all the same. Son or God, I am thine.
Натюрморт, which means a still life. Натюрморт. Вещи и люди нас окружают и те, и эти терзают глаз. Лучше жить в темноте. Я сижу на скамье, в парке, глядя во след проходящей семье. Мне опротивил свет. Это январь, зима, согласно календарю. Когда противит тьма, тогда я заговорю. Пора, я готов начать. Неважно с чего открыть рот, я могу молчать. Но лучше мне говорить о чем, о днях, о ночах. Или же ничего, или же о вещах, о него, людях, они умрут все. Я тоже умру, это бесплодный труд. Как писать на ветру, кровь моя холодна, холод ее лютей, реки промерзшей до дна. Я не люблю людей, внешность их не по мне, лицами их привит, к жизни какой-то непокидаемый вид, что-то в их лицах есть, что противно уму, что выражает лесть неизвестно кому. Вещи приятней в них, нет ни зла, ни добра, внешне, а если вник в них и внутри нутра, внутри у предметов пыль, прах, древоточец, жук, стенки, сухой мотыль, неудобно для рук пыль, и включенный свет только пыль озарит, даже если предмет герметично закрыт. Старый буфет извне, так же, как изнутри, напоминает мне Нотр-Дам-де-Пари. В недрах буфета тьма, швабра, епитрахиль, пыль не сотрут сама. Вещь, как правило, пыль, не чится перебороть, не напрягает бровь, ибо пыль — это плоть времени, плоть и кровь. Последнее время я сплю среди бела дня, видимо, смерть моя испытывает меня, поднося хоть дышу, зеркальце мне ко рту, как я переношу небытие на свету, я неподвижен, два бедра холодны, как лед, венозная синева мрамором отдает, преподнося сюрприз суммой своих углов. Вещь выпадает из миропорядка слов, вещь не стоит и не движется, это бред. Вещь есть пространство вне, коего вещи нет. Вещь можно бросить, сжечь, распотрошить, сломать, грохнуть. При этом вещь не крикнет ебена мать. Дерево, тень, земля, под деревом для корней, корявые вензеля, глина, гряда камней, корни их переплет, камень, чей груз освобождает от данной системы уз. Он неподвижен ни сдвинуть, ни унести тень. Человек в тени, точно рыба в сети. Вещь коричневый цвет, вещи, чей сумрак стерт. Сумерки больше нет, ничего, натюрморт. Смерть придет и найдет тело, чья гладь визит. Смерти точно приход женщины отразит. Это абсурд, вранье, череп, скелет, коса. Смерть придет, у нее будут твои глаза. Мать говорит Христу: ты мой сын или мой Бог, ты прибит к кресту. Как я пойду домой, как ступлю за порог, не поняв, не решив, ты мой сын или Бог, то есть мертв или жив. Он говорит в ответ: мертвый или живой, разницы жено нет, сын или Бог, я твой. I just wonder whether they need a reference. Oh no, I don't think so. Well, if they can get it, well, they can.
Okay. No reference. Odysseus to Telemachus.
Oh, well, just one thing. Well, still. Well, what I'm trying to do throughout this reading is to maintain some semblance of chronology. So these poems, well, the first three poems, that is this last poem included, they are just the old ones that something, well, before 1972. And from then on, the later poems are going to be of the later date, etc., etc.
Odysseus to Telemachus.
Telemachus.
Telemachus. Odysseus to Telemachus. Translated by George L. Klein. My dear Telemachus, the Trojan War is over now. I don't recall who won it. The Greeks, no doubt, for only they would leave so many dead, so far from their own homeland. But still, my homeward way has proved too long. While we were wasting time there, old Poseidon, it almost seems, stretched and extended space. I don't know where I am or what this place can be. It would appear some filthy island with bushes, buildings, and great grunting pigs, a garden choked with weeds, some queen or other, grass, and huge stones. Telemachus, my son, to a wanderer, the faces of all islands resemble one another, and the mind trips, numbering waves, eyes soar from sea horizons, run, and the flesh of water stuffs the ears. I can't remember how the war came out, even how old you are. I can't remember. Grow up then, my Telemachus. Grow strong. Only the gods know if we'll see each other again. You've long since ceased to be that babe before whom I reined in the plowing bullocks. Had it not been for Polymedes' trick, we too would still be living in one household. But maybe he was right. Away from me, you are quite safe from all Oedipal passions, and your dreams, my Telemachus, are blameless.
Одиссей Телемаку. Мой Телемак, Троянская война окончена. Кто победил, не помню. Должно быть греки, столько мертвецов вне дома бросить могут только греки. И все-таки ведущая домой дорога оказалась слишком длинной, как будто Посейдон, пока мы там теряли время, растянул пространство. Мне неизвестно, где я нахожусь, что передо мной какой-то грязный остров, кусты, постройки, хрюканье свиней, заросший сад, какая-то царица, трава да камни, милый Телемак. Все острова похожи друг на друга, когда так долго странствуешь, и мозг уже сбивается, считая волны. Глаз засоренный горизонтом плачет, и водяное мясо застит слух. Не помню я, чем кончилась война, и сколько лет тебе сейчас, не помню. Расти, большой, мой Телемак, расти. Лишь боги знают, свидимся ли снова. Ты сейчас уже не тот младенец, перед которым я сдержал быков. Когда б не Паламед, мы жили вместе, но, может быть, и прав он, без меня. Ты от страстей Эдиповых избавлен, и сны твои, мой Телемак, безгрешны.
The Tams at Chelsea, it's divided into 6 sections, and again I'll pause after each one of them. It's translated by David Rigsby, 1974. The Tams at Chelsea. November. The sun, having risen on an empty stomach, hovers in a chemist's window on jars of soda. The wind encounters a hurtle in every subject. Chimneys, trees, a man driven over the tarmac. Gulls keep a vigil on fences, sparrows peck at the ground. A transport without wheels crawls over the Tams as though on a gray, idly wandering road. Toward the right bank, Thomas More aims his eyes with the age-old desire and strains his mind. The dull stare is itself more solid than the iron of the Albert Bridge. And, to put it tersely, it's the best way of getting out of Chelsea. The endless street, making a sharp slant, runs to the river, ending with an iron arrow. The body scatters its steps on the walk from its rumpled pants, and trees stand queuing up for the narrow, sturgeon-like waves. That's the only type of fish the Tams ever is fit to offer. A local rain darkens Agrippa's water pipe. A man able to see a century into the future would view a sooted portico, unspoiled by a pub sign hanging down below, a line of barges, an ensemble of monotonous drain-pipe flutes, and at the Tate, an omnibus. London town's fine, especially in the rain, which is not to be stopped by cloth caps or crowns. In this climate, only those who make umbrellas have a chance to seize the throne. On a gray day, when even a shadow has no strength to catch up with your back and the money is getting tight, in a city where, dark as the brick may get, the milk will always stand sedately white. Scanning the paper, one may read with care the account of someone fallen under a car, and only the mention of the relative's grief makes one sigh, well, it's not me, with relief. These words were dictated to me not by love or the muse, but by a searching, dull voice that had lost the swiftness of sound. I replied, facing my bedroom wall, "How did you live in those years?" Like the H in O. O. Would you describe your concerns? The price of a decent loaf. What in the world do you love most? Rivers and street, the long things of life. Do you remember the past? Yes, it was winter. I went for a sleigh ride, caught a cold from the air. Are you afraid of death? No, it's the normal dark, but even when you're used to it, you can't make out a chair. The air lives a life that is not ours to understand. It lives its own blue, windy life that starts overhead and soars upward, ending nowhere. Looking out of the window, you see spires and chimneys, rooftops of lead. You see this, the beginning of a great damp world, where a roadway, which reared us, heads to its own premature end. Dawn curls over the horizon. A mail truck clangs by. There is no longer anything one can choose to believe, except that while there's a bank on the right, there's a left one too. Blessed news. London town's fine, the clocks run on time. The heart can only lose a length to Big Ben. The Tams runs to the sea, swollen like a vein, and tugs strain their bases in Chelsea. London's fine, if not in height, then in breadth it lumbers, as boundlessly as it can down by the river. And when you sleep, the telephone numbers of your past and present blend to produce a figure astronomical, and your finger turning the dial of the winter moon finds the colorless, vile chirp engaged, and this steady noise is clearer than God's own voice. Mr. Brodsky has translated these himself from a part of speech. I was born and grew up in the Baltic marshland by zinc-gray breakers that always marched on in twos. Hence, all rhymes, hence that wan, flat voice that ripples between them like hair still moist, if it ripples at all. Propped on a pallid elbow, the helix picks out of them no sea rumble, but a clap of canvas, of shutters, of hands, a kettle on the burner, boiling. Lastly, the seagull's metal cry. What keeps hearts from falseness in that flat region is that there is nowhere to hide and plenty of room for vision. Only sound needs echo and dreads its lack. A glance is accustomed to no glance back.
Я родился и вырос в Балтийских болотах, подле серых цинковых волн, всегда навигавших по две, и отсюда все рифмы, отсюда тот блеклый голос, вьющийся между ними, как мокрый волос, если вьется вообще, облокотясь на локоть. Раковина ушная, в них различить не рокот, но хлопки полотна, ставень ладоней, чайник, кипящий на керосинке, максимум крики чаек в этих плоских краях. То и хранит от фальши сердце, что скрыться негде и видно дальше. Это только для звука, пространство всегда помеха. Глаз не посетует на недостаток эха.
The north buckles metal, glass it won't harm, teaches the throat to say, let me in. I was raised by the cold that, to warm my palm, gathered my fingers around a pen. Freezing, I see the red sun that sets behind oceans, and there is no soul in sight. Either my heel slips on ice, or the globe itself arches shapely under my soul, and in my throat, where a boring tale or tea or laughter should be the norm, snow grows all the louder, and farewell darkens like Scott wrapped in a polar storm.
Север крошит металл, но щадит стекло. Учит гортань проговорить «впусти». Холод меня воспитал и вложил перо в пальцы, чтобы их согреть в горсти. Замерзая, я вижу, как за моря солнце садится, и никого кругом. То ли по льду каблук скользит, то ли сама земля закругляется под каблуком. И в гортани моей, где положен смех, или речь, или горячий чай, все отчетливее раздается снег, и чернеет, что твой седов прощай.
From nowhere with love, the nth of March ember air. Sweetie, respected darling, but in the end, it's irrelevant, too, for memory won't restore features not yours, and no one's devoted friend greets you from this fifth last part of earth, resting on whale-like backs of cow-herding boys. I loved you better than angels, and himself, and am farther off due to that from you than I am from both of them, now late at night in the sleeping vale, in the little township, up to its doorknobs in snow, writhing upon the stale sheets for the whole matter's skin. Deep I'm howling you through my pillow dike, many seas away that are milling nearer, with my limbs in the dark, playing you double like an insanity-stricken mirror.
Ниоткуда с любовью 20 мартабря, дорогой, уважаемый, милая, но неважно даже кто, ибо черт лица говоря, откровенно не вспомнить уже ни ваш, но и ничей верный друг. Вас приветствует с одного из 5 континентов, держащегося на ковбоях. Я любил тебя больше, чем ангелов и самого, и поэтому дальше теперь от тебя, чем от них обоих поздно ночью, в уснувшей долине, на самом дне, в городке, занесенном снегом по ручку двери, извиваясь ночью на простыне, как не сказано ниже, по крайней мере, я взбиваю подушку мычащим ты, за морями, которым конца и края, в темноте всем телом твои черты, как безумное зеркало, повторяя:
You've forgotten that village, lost in the rows and rows of swamp and pine-wooded territory where no scarecrows ever stand in orchards. The crops aren't worth it, and the roads are also just dishes and brushwood surface. Old Nastasia is dead, I take it, and Pesterev too, for sure. And if not, he's sitting drunk in the cellar or is making something out of the headboard of our bed, a wicket gate, say, or some kind of shed. And in winter, they're chopping wood, and turnips is all they live on, and a star blinks from all the smoke in the frosty heaven, and no bride and chintz at the window, but dust's gray craft, plus the emptiness where once we loved.
Ты забыла деревню, затерянную в болотах, залесенной губернии, где чучел на огородах, отродясь не держат ни те там злаки, и дорогой тоже все гати да буераки. Баба Настя поди померла, и Пестерев жив едва ли, а как жив, то пьяный сидит в подвале, либо ладит из спинки нашей кровати что-то. Говорят, калитку, не то ворота, а зимой там колют дрова, и сидят на репе, и звезда моргает от дыма в морозном небе, и не в ситцах в окне невеста, а праздник пыли, да пустое место, где мы любили.
Near the ocean, by candlelight, scattered farms, fields overrun with sorrel, lucerne, and clover. Toward nightfall, the body, like Shiva, grows extra arms, reaching out yearningly to a lover. A mouse rustles through the grass. An owl drops down. Suddenly, creaking rafters expand a second. One sleeps more soundly in a wooden town. Since you dream these days only of things that happened, there's a smell of fresh fish. An armchair's profile is glued to the wall. The gauze is too limp to bulk at. The slightest breeze and a ray of the moon, meanwhile, draws up the tide like a slipping blanket.
Около океана при свете свечи вокруг поле, заросшее клевером, щавелем и люцерной. В вечеру тело точно ушивы рук, дотянуться желающих до бесценной. Упадая в траву, сова настигает мышь, беспричинно поскрипывает стропила. В деревянном городе крепче спишь, потому что снится теперь только то, что было. Пахнет свежей рыбой, к стене прилип профиль стула, тонкая марля вяло шевелится в окне, и луна поправляет лучом прилив, как сползающее одеяло.
And when the future is uttered, swarms of mice rush out of the Russian language and gnaw a piece of ripened memory which is twice as hole-ridden as real cheese. After all these years, it hardly matters who or what stands in the corner, hidden by heavy drapes, and your mind resounds not with a seraphic doe, only their rustle. Life that no one dares to appraise, like that gift horse's mouth, bares its teeth in a grin at each encounter. What gets left of a man amounts to a part, to his spoken part, to a part of speech.
И при слове «грядущее» из русского языка выбегают мыши и всей оравой отгрызают от лакомого куска памяти, что твой сыр дырявый после стольких зим уже безразлично, что или кто стоит в углу у окна за шторой, и в мозгу раздается не неземное до, но ее шуршание, жизнь которой, как дареной вещи, не смотришь в пасть, обнажает зубы при каждой встрече. От всего человека вам остается часть речи вообще, часть речи.
Not that I am losing my grip. I am just tired of summer. You reach for a shirt in a drawer, and the day is wasted. If only winter were here for snow to smother all these streets, these humans. But first, the blasted green. I would sleep in my clothes or just pluck a borrowed book, while what's left of the year's slack rhythm, like a dog abandoning its blind owner, crosses the road at the usual zebra. Freedom is when you forget the spelling of the tyrant's name, and your mouth's saliva is sweeter than Persian pie, and though your brain is wrung tight as the horn of a ram, nothing drops from your pale blue eye.
Я не то что схожу с ума, но устал за лето. За рубашкой в комод полезешь, и день потерян. Поскорей быть, что ли, пришла зима и занесла все это. Города, человеков, но для начала зелень. Стану спать, не раздевшись, или читать с любого места чужую книгу, пока мест остатки года, как собака, сбежавшая от слепого, переходит в положенном месте асфальт. Свобода — это когда забываешь отчество у тирана, и слюна во рту слаще халвы Шираза. И хотя твой мозг перекручен, как рог барана, ничего не каплет из голубого глаза.
This poem is from a sequence. The title of the sequence is In England. The translator is Alan Myers, 1976. And this poem is titled York, in Memoriam, W.H. Auden. The butterflies of northern England dance about the goosefoot below the brick wall of a dead factory. After Wednesday comes Thursday, and so on. The sky breathes heat, the fields burn, the towns give off a smell of striped cloth, long wrapped and musty. Dahlias die of thirst. And your voice. I have known 3 great poets, each one a prize son of a bitch, sounds in my ears with disturbing clarity. I slow my steps and turn to look around. 4 years soon since you died in an Austrian hotel. Under the crossing sign, not a soul. Tiled roofs, asphalt, limestone, poplars. Chester died too. You know that, only too well. Like beads on a dusty abacus, sparrows sit solemnly on wires. Nothing so much transforms a familiar entrance into a crowd of columns as love for a man, especially when he's dead. The absence of wind compels taut leaves to tense their muscles and stir against their will. The white butterfly's dance is like a storm-tossed ship. A man takes his own blind alley with him wherever he goes about the world, and a bent knee with its obtuse angle multiplies the captive perspective like a wedge of cranes holding their course for the south, like all things moving onward. the emptiness swallowing sunlight, something in common with the hawthorn, grows steadily more palpable in the outstretched hand's direction, and the world merges into a long street where others live. In this sense, it is England. England, in this sense, still an empire and fully capable, if you believe the music, gurgling like water, of ruling waves, or any element, for that matter. Lately, I've been losing my grip a little, snarl at my shop window reflection, while my finger dials its number, my hand lets the phone fall. Closing my eyes, I see an empty boat, motionless, far out in the bay. Coming out of the phone booth, I hear a starling's voice, in its cry, alarm. But before it flies away, the sound melts in the air. Whose blue expanse, innocent of objects, is much like this life here, where things stand out more in the desert. For you're not here, and vacuum gradually fills the landscape. Like flecks of foam, sheep take their ease on bottle green waves of Yorkshire heather. The corps de ballet of nimble butterflies takes their cue from an unseen bow, flicker above a grass-grown ditch, giving the eye no point of rest. And the willow herb's vertical stalk is longer than the ancient Roman road, heading north, forgotten by all at Rome. Subtracting the greater from the lesser, time from man, you get words, the remainder standing out against their white backgrounds more clearly than the body ever manages to while it lives, though it cry, "Catch me." Thus, the source of love turns into the object of love.
Йорк. Бабочки Северной Англии пляшут над лебедою под кирпичной стеной мертвой фабрики. За средою наступает четверг и т.д. Небо пышет жаром, и поля выгорают. Города дают лежалым полосатым сукном. Георгины страдает жаждой, твой голос. Я знал 3 великих поэтов. Каждый был большой сукин сын, раздается в моих ушах с неожиданной четкостью. Я замедляю шаг и готов оглянуться. Скоро 4 года, как ты умер в гостинице, как ты умер в австрийской гостинице, под стеной, под стрелой перехода. Ни души, черепичные кровли, асфальт и звездка, тополя. Честер тоже умер, тебе известно, это лучше, чем мне, как костяшки на пыльных счетах. Воробьи восседают на проводах, ничто так не превращает знакомый подъезд в толчью колонн, как любовь к человеку, особенно если он мертв. Отсутствие ветра заставляет тугие листья напрягать свои мышцы и нехотя шевелиться. Танец белых капустниц похож на корабль в бурю. Человек приносит с собою тупик в любую точку света, и согнутое колено размножает тупым углом перспективу плена, как журавлиный клин, когда он берет курс на юг, как все движущееся вперед. Пустота, поглощая солнечный свет на общих основаниях с боярышником, увеличивается на ощупь в направлении вытянутой руки, и мир сливается в длинную улицу, на которой живут другие. В этом смысле он Англия, Англия в этом смысле до сих пор империя, и в состоянии, если верить музыке, булькающей водой, править морями, впрочем, любой средой. Я в последнее время немного сбиваюсь, скалюсь отражению в стекле витрины, пока палец набирает свой номер, рука опускает трубку. Стоит закрыть глаза, как я вижу пустую шлюпку, замершую на воде посередине бухты. Выходя наружу из телефонной будки, слышу голос Скворца, в крике его испуг. Но прежде чем он взлетает, звук растворяется в воздухе, чьей беспредметной сине. И сродни эта жизнь, где вещи видней в пустыне, ибо в ней тебя нет, и вакуум постепенно заполняет местный ландшафт, как сухая пена. Овцы покоятся на темно-зеленых волнах яркширского вереска, кардебалет проворных бабочек, повинуясь невидимому смычку, мельтешит над заросшей канавой, не давая зрачку ни на чем задержаться, и вертикальный стебель, и вончает длинней уходящий на север древней римской дороги, всеми забытой в Риме, вычитая из меньшего большее, из человека время, получаешь в остатки слова, выделяющиеся на белом фоне отчетливей, чем удается телом это сделать при жизни, даже сказав «лови», что источник любви превращает в объект любви. We're going to read 3 more poems. One is somewhat longish, and 2 are, relatively speaking, short. 10 minutes or no.
Plato elaborated. It's in 4 sections, translated by George L. Klein, 1977. I should like Fortunatus. Okay. What a mouth.
There are a couple of names.
Okay,
yeah,
obviously that I get.
It's Fortunatus,
Okay.
and also Hammurabi.
Yes.
Well, that's about it. Well, no, Hammurabi, no.
Okay.
Yeah, Hammurabi.
Hammurabi.
Yeah,
Fortunatus.
Fortunatus.
Fortunatus. Plato elaborated. I should like Fortunatus to live in a city where a river would jut out from under a bridge like a hand from a sleeve and would flow toward the gulf, spreading its fingers like Chopin, who never shook a fist at anyone as long as he lived. There would be an opera house in which a slightly overripe tenor would duly descant Mario's arias, keeping the tyrant amused. He'd applaud from his loge, but I from the back rows would hiss through clenched teeth, you creep. That city would not lack a yacht club, would not lack a soccer club, noting the absence of smoke from the brick factory chimneys. I'd know it was Sunday and would lurch in a bus across town, clutching a couple of bucks. I'd twine my voice into the common animal hooting on that field where what the head begins is finished by the foot on the myriad laws laid down by Hammurabi. The most... Hammurabi, okay. Cement here. Hammurabi, the most important deal with corner kicks and penalty kicks to boot. I'd want a library there, and in the empty halls I'd browse through books containing precisely the same number of commas as the dirty words in daily gutter language, words which haven't yet broken into literary prose, much less into verse. There'd be a large railroad station in that city. Its facade, damaged in war, would be much more impressive than the outside world. Spotting a palm tree in an airline window, the ape that dozes within me would open its 2 eyes wide. And when winter, Fortunatus, threw its coarse shroud over the square, I would wander, yawning, through the gallery where every canvas, especially those of David and Ang, would seem as familiar as any birthmarks are. From my window at dusk, I would watch the horde of bleating automobiles as they flash back and forth past shapely nude columns and Doric hairdos, standing pale and rebellious on the steps of the city court. There would be a cafe in that city with a quite decent blancmange where, if I should ask why we need the 20th century when we already have the 19th, my colleague would stare fixedly at his fork or his knife. Surely there is a street in that city with twin rows of trees, an entranceway flanked by a nymph's torso and other things equally recherché, and a portrait would hang in the drawing room, giving you an idea of how the mistress of the house looked in her salad days. I would hear an unruffled voice calmly treat of things not related to dinner by candlelight. The flickering flames on the hearth, Fortunatus, would splash crimson stains on a green dress, but finally the fire would go out. Time which, unlike water, flows horizontally, threading its way from Friday to Saturday, say, would, in the dark of that city, smooth out every wrinkle, and then, in the end, wash its own tracks away. And there ought to be monuments there. Not only the bronze riders I would know by name, men who have thrust their feet into history's stirrups to tame history. I would know the names of the stallions also, considering the stamp which the latter came to brand the inhabitants with, a cigarette glued to my lip, walking home, well past midnight, I would conjecture aloud, like some gypsy parsing an open palm between hiccups, reading the cracks in the asphalt, what fate the lifeline of the city showed. And when they would finally arrest me for espionage, for subversive activity, vagrants for menage a trois, and the crowd, boiling around me, would bellow, poking me with their work-roughened forefingers, outsider, we'll settle your hash. Then I would secretly smile and say to myself, see, this is your chance to find out in Act 3 how it looks from the inside. You've stared long enough at the outside, so take note of every detail as you shout Viva la Patrie.
Развивая Платона, я хотел бы жить, Фортунатус, в городе, где река высовывалась бы из-под моста, как из рукава рука, и чтобы она впадала в залив, растопырив пальцы, как Шопен, никогда не показывавший кулака, чтобы там была опера, и чтобы в ней ветеран, тенор, исправно пел арию Марио по вечерам, чтоб тиран ему аплодировал в ложе, а я в портере бормотал бы, сжав зубы от ненависти, баран. В этом городе был бы их клуб и футбольный клуб. По отсутствию дыма из кирпичных фабричных труб я узнавал бы о наступлении воскресенья и долго бы трясся в автобусе, мучая в жмене рук. Я бы вплетал свой голос в общий звериный вой, там, где нога продолжает, начатая головой. Изо всех законов, изданных Хаммурапи, самые главные — пенальти и угловой. Там была бы библиотека, и в залах ее пустых я листал бы тома с таким же количеством запятых, как количество скверных слов ежедневной речи, не прорвавшихся в прозу, ни тем более в стих. Там стоял бы большой вокзал, пострадавший в войне, с фасадом куда занятней, чем мир вовне. Там при виде зеленой пальмы в витрине авиалиний просыпалась бы обезьяна, дремлющая во мне. И когда зима Фортунатус облекает квартал вредно, я б скучал в галерее, где каждое полотно, особливо Энгра или Давида, как родимое выглядели бы пятно. В сумерках я следил бы в окне стада мычащих автомобилей, снующих туда-сюда, мимо стройных ногих колонн с дорической прической, безмятежно белеющих на фронтоне суда. Там была бы эта кофейня с недурным бламанже, где, сказав, что зачем нам 20 век, если есть уже 19 век, я бы видел, как взор коллеги надолго сосредотачивается на вилке или ноже. Там должна быть та улица с деревьями в 2 ряда, подъезд торсом нимфы в нише и прочая ерунда. И подъезд висел бы в гостиной, давая вам представление о том, как хозяйка выглядела, будучи молода. Я внимал бы ровному голосу, повествующему о вещах, не имеющих отношения к ужину при свечах. И огонь в камельке Фортунатус бросал бы багровый отблеск на зеленое платье, но под конец зачах время, текущее, в отличие от воды, горизонтально от вторника до среды. В темноте там разглаживало бы морщины и стирало бы собственные следы. И там были бы памятники, я бы знал имена не только бронзовых всадников, всунувших стремена истории свою ногу, но и ихних четвероногих, учитывая отпечаток, оставленный ими на населении города, и с присохшей губе сигаретую поздно за полночь, возвращаясь пешком к себе, как цыган по ладони, по трещинам на асфальте, я гадал бы, икая вслух о его судьбе. И когда бы меня схватили в итоге за шпионаж, подрывную активность, бродяжничество, менажа, труа, и толпа бы, беснуясь вокруг, кричала, тыча в меня натруженными, указательными, не наш, я бы втайне был счастлив, шепча про себя, смотри, это твой шанс узнать, как выглядит изнутри то, на что ты так долго глядел снаружи. Запоминай же подробности, восклицая «Vive la patrie». Well, 2 more poems, and well, I'll at least try to entertain you, and I'll try to read both of them in English. One of them is, the title is Letters from the Ming Dynasty. Well, the only things that you ought to know about Ming Dynasty in order to get a better idea of this poem is that Ming Dynasty is one of the cruelest in the history of China, also very good on artifacts. Another thing about this poem is that, well, there is a word li, which is the measure of the length of distance, which is somewhat a quarter of a mile, I would imagine. And, well, the poem, the title is Letters of the Ming, from the Ming Dynasty. Well, it's not exactly letters here. Well, it's obviously stylization. Well, there are 2 letters. First is written by a woman, presumably a courtier, a lady in waiting to her traveling faraway husband. And the second poem, the second letter is that husband presumably replying, reply of that husband. Well, this poem has been translated by Derek Walcott. Well, I'll read it first in English and then in Russian. The difference is not significant here. Soon it will be 13 years since the nightingale fluttered out of its cage and vanished, and at nightfall the emperor washes down his medicine with the blood of another tailor, then, propped on silk pillows, turns on a jewel bird that lulls him with its level, identical song. It's this sort of anniversary, odd-numbered, wrong, that we celebrate these days in our land under heaven. The special mirror that smooths wrinkles even costs more every year. Our small garden is choked with weeds. The sky, too, is pierced by spires like pins in the shoulder blades of someone so sick that his back is all well out to sea. And whenever I talk about astronomy to the emperor's son, he begins to joke. This letter to you, beloved, from your wild duck, is brushed onto scented rice paper given me by the empress Lately there is no rice, but the flow of rice paper is endless. 1,000 li long road starts with the first step. As the proverb goes, pity, the road home does not depend on the same step. It exceeds 10 times 1,000 li, especially counting from zeros. 1,000 li, 2,000 li. 1,000 means thou shalt not ever see thy native place, and the meaninglessness, like a plague, spreads from words onto numbers, onto zeros especially. Wind blows us westward like the yellow tears from a dried pod, there where the wall towers. Against it, man's figure is ugly and stiff as a frightening hieroglyph, as any illegible scripture at which one stares. This pull in one direction only has made me something elongated like a horse's head, and all the body should do is spent by its shadow, rustling across the wild barley's withered blade. Скоро 13 лет, как соловей из клетки, вырвался и улетел, и на ночь глядя таблетки, Багдыхан запивает кровью проштрафившегося портного, откидывается на подушки и, включив заводного, погружается в сон, убаюканной ровной песней. Вот какие теперь мы празднуем в Поднебесной невеселые, нечетные годовщины. Специальное зеркало, разглаживающее морщины, каждый год дорожает наш маленький сад в упадке. Небо тоже исколото шпилями, как лопатки, затылок больного, которого только спину мы видим. И я иногда объясняю сыну Багдыхана природу звезд, а он отпускает шутки. Это письмо от твоей возлюбленной дикой утки, писано тушью на рисовой тонкой бумаге, что дала мне императрица. Почему-то в последнее время вокруг все больше бумаги, все меньше риса. Дорога в 1000 ли начинается с одного шага, гласит пословица. Жалко, что от него не зависит дорога обратно, превосходящая многократно 1000 ли, особенно отсчитывая а то, 1 ли 1000 ли, 2 ли 1000 ли. 1000 означает, что ты сейчас вдали от родимого крова, и зараза бессмысленности со слова перекидывается на цифры, особенно на нули. Ветер несет нас на запад, как желтые семена из лопнувшего стручка, туда, где стоит стена. На фоне ее человек уродлив и страшен, как иероглиф, как любые другие неразборчивые письмена. Движение в одну сторону превращает меня в нечто вытянутое, как голова коня. Силы, жившие в теле, ушли на трение тени, а сухие колосья дикого ячменя. Well, if that was, if the previous poem I read out, out of desire to entertain you, this I have to do out of necessity because it doesn't have the Russian original. It's written in English, and it's Elegy for Robert Lowell. And the reason I've written that in English wasn't in order to flex my muscles, but mostly in order to please the shadow. It has 4 parts, and I think the reality here is so much local reality that is. I don't think there is any need for elaborations. In Elegy for Robert Lowell, in the autumnal blue of your church-hooded New England, The porcupine sharpens its golden needles against Bostonian bricks to a point of needless, blinding shine. White foam kneels and breaks on the altar. People's eyes glitter inside the church like pebbles splashed by the tide. What is salvation since a tear magnifies like glass a future perfect tense? The choir, time and again, sings in the key of the cross of our Father's gain, which is but our loss. There will be a lot of Almighty Lord, but not so much as a shred of your flesh. When man dies, the wardrobe gapes instead. We acquire the idle state of your jackets and ties. On the Charles Bank, dark, crowding, printed letters surround the sealed tongue. A child, coma-like, loiters among dresses and pants of vowels and consonants that don't make a word. The lack of pen spells the uselessness, and the black Cadillac sails through the screaming police sirens like a new Odysseus keeping silence. Planes at Logan thunder off from the brown mass of industrial tundra with its bureaucratic moss. Huge auto herds graze on gray, convoluted flat stripes shining with grease like an updated flag. Shoals of cod and eel that discover this land before Vikings or Spaniards still beset the shore. In the republic of ends and means that counts each deed, poetry represents the minority of the dead. Now you become a part of the inanimate, plain terror of disregard of the common pain. You knew far more of death than he ever will learn about you or dare to reveal. It might feel like an old dark place with no match to strike where each word is trying a latch. Under this roof, flesh adopts all the invisibility of lingering soul. In the sky with the false song of the weathercock, your bell tolls a ceaseless alarm clock.
Does any one of you want to ask a question?
Read something which is not yet translated into English.
Any questions? Yes.
Somewhat unpoetic question. Curious to know what your attitude is toward the Soviet system.
Well,
These days, what sort of they seem kind of something maybe you already know what it is. I don't have to know. I'm curious to know if you have something.
well, in a word, negative. In a word. And I don't think it's, and whatever I'm going to say will boil down to exactly the same thing, to the negative. So I better not, it's silly to elaborate on that because it boils down to the same thing. Yeah. Somebody else? Yeah.
What is the most important thing for you in a translation?
Well, obviously accuracy. Secondly, kind of dreamlike stuff is the resemblance of the original's prosody. Yeah. Well, I certainly, in cases I can insist, I do insist on maintaining, at least the structure. The maximal requirement is the structure and the rhymes and the way, the order, basically those things, yeah.
So that when you translate yourself, it's not always essential that the English version only convey all the
Well, it's an extremely convoluted issue because in the first place, well, in order to convey what the original does, you ought to reproduce all the tricks that there in the original. You see, well, you certainly you know that from the threshold that you are somewhat doomed. So you sacrifice certain things, yeah, obviously. Well, but you try to catch up somewhere later, yeah. So that on the whole entity has a kind of kind of corresponding quality per capita, so to speak, yeah, to the original, yeah.
Do you feel your style has changed at all since you're no longer living in a Russian-speaking environment?
I don't think style has changed, and in the first place, I would be very grateful if anybody would define the style. Well, I would say that certain prosodic traits have changed. Yeah, that is, I think, as far as I can trace it, I think there is a slight, not a slight, considerable shift from the very well stressed regular meters to somewhat to intoning to the kind of accentuated verse. That's as much as I can say about the changes that took place, or at least that's as much as I can see. As for the substance, well, I don't think that there's any substantial changes took place, really. Well, somebody else. Or everything is clear. Yeah, please.
Tell us a little bit about your writing habits.
My writing habits.
Then,
Well, that's fairly regular as far as I can observe. Well, that is not regular. On the contrary, well, I write whenever I can. I don't have any kind of whenever I have time, so to speak. Yeah. Not that, well, I don't have favorite hours. Yeah. Well, in the morning as well as in the evening. Yes, please.
I wonder if there are any specific sources for the way in which the intonation with which you recite the verse is kind of a specific way of singing it almost. I'm wondering if there
Well, it's a fairly simple matter, I think. Well, it's more or less the kind of the way the thing's done in general in Russian. Well, when the Russian verse is delivered by the native speakers, well, it has to do with two things, I think. First of all, it has to do with the fact that, well, how to put it? Well, Russian literature came into existence, well, poetry, so to speak, well, in kind of strict sense, as the literature with authors, yeah? Not that long ago. After all, Russian poetry is about 250 years old, 300. Well, and it started in the same way all the literatures, I think, of the Christian or post-Christian world have started. That is, well, as a kind of spin-off of the book of the Common Prayer, and that is the cradle of Russian literature is liturgical cradle, so to speak. Yeah. So therefore, certain tendencies for intoning still linger. Another thing is, which is more, I think, crucial for this kind of a technique, tendency, manner, whatever you name it. Well, has to do with the fact that in the Russian equivalent of high schools, you see, they force, almost literally, the students to memorize poems, and the child is requested to deliver that out loud, underlying with intoning, with his whatever it is, stressing with his voice, etc., his understanding, so to speak, revealed through intoning, the understanding of the text he reads. Yeah. That's about it. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you consider yourself to be part of a group that might be labeled Russian immigrant literature? And if so, whom else in that group do you admire as a poet? Who's writing now?
Well, you see, well, it's not that I have anything against that label. The simple fact is that, well, literature, well, the language in which things are done takes pretty much care of where it's done, you see? Well, and still, if to talk about the
a number of Russian poets living outside of Russia. I would say, well, there are several talented people, quite a lot in fact. I would say, well, I can give you a couple of names. Well, for instance, Eduard Limonov, he's quite a talented man. And who else? Well, and people from the older generation, that is from the post-war, from the war immigration, like Ivan Yelagin. However, not just in order to diminish these people who live in immigration. Well, I think the better poets, well, as it happened, well, they live in the mainland Russia, yeah, that is in the Soviet Union. Yeah, well, I can give the names as well, but well, one of them, and I think a greater things, well, one of the greatest things there is in the world of poetry, well, at least as far as I can see it, well, is Evgeny Rain. Well, it's kind of spelled like rain, yeah, but it means a different thing. It comes from Rhine River in Germany, River Rhine. Another awfully talented man, I think, also, is Alexander Kushner, Kuchner. Well, two at least. And also, there's a magnificent man by the name, well, kind of sounds a little bit Polish, Kublanovsky, Yuri Kublanovsky. Well, yes, please. Yeah.
Did you say anything about the meter of your verse in Russian? What sort of meter?
Oh, the regular meters. Well, meters are meters because they're, well, iambic pentameter is iambic pentameter either in Russian or in German or in English. Well, so I employ the regular meters. Yeah. Can't say anything specific about them. Yes, please.
If you think that talk is a barren for trade, as you say,
Yeah.
what do you think the difference is about the words of poetry? And do you think that poetry has any moral authority today? And if it doesn't, what can you do about it?
Well, now, well, since you asked for it, well, you'll get it. Well, the thing is that as a species, we differ from the other species precisely with our ability to talk, yeah, with the speech. Therefore, well, poetry is the sublime or a superior form of language. Therefore, the poetry is the goal of the species, in a sense. Yeah. Well, and there's nothing else to it. Well, and insofar as it doesn't command, insofar as one finds that it doesn't command some authority or whatever it is, well, he or she or whoever, one commits, in a sense, an anthropological crime against the species, against himself as a species. Somebody else? Yeah.
I think in that same poem you talk about the primacy of your voice over what you've lost.
What? Say it again?
I think in that same poem, I may be wrong, you speak about the primacy of your voice.
Privacy of my voice?
Primacy.
Primacy.
Which implied to me that maybe you survived your transplanting, and I
Well, I don't really know. Well, if I say that, well, glory to me. Somebody else? Yes.
Are you writing more English prose now?
Well, I'm writing quite a lot of essays, but it's, well, yeah, I do that, well, because I'm quite a sucker for this language. I like it very much, yeah. It's awfully interesting to write in different language.
When did you begin studying English on your own?
Technically speaking, in 1964, when I was, well, 24, I think. But it wasn't really studying. Well, I began to translate things. Well, those that deemed to me, or I kind of had a certain sense that there's something awfully interesting going on there. And so I began to try to, well, I had some high school English, but it wasn't, well, In fact, I was very bad at that. But seriously speaking, the serious affair with the English language got kind of underway the moment I stepped on these shores. Yeah. Yes, please.
I was wondering, aside from Lowell and Auden, what English language writers interested you?
Dead or alive? Well, the thing is, well, it's not that I have a preference. I'm really worrying about the list. My list might be terribly long. I would imagine you're asking about the moderns, more or less. Yeah, the 20th century. Yeah. Well, I'd say Thomas Hardy, Edward Thomas. Those are the Englishmen, and Edwin Arlington Robinson, Frost, Robert Frost, obviously Yeats and Eliot, but I kind of think that Auden is more dear to me. I think he's a more humble poet in the first place. Equally sublime but more humble. Who else? Stevens. But the more interesting is to talk about, I think, those who are. There was also a magnificent poet, for whom I have a, whatever it is, soft spot, so to speak. It's Weldon Keys. Weldon Keys, Kees. He's relatively unknown for your generation. Who else? Among the living, there are quite a lot. In the first place, I was quite fortunate to meet and to know, and to collaborate with Derek Walcott. I think to me he's the most interesting things today in the English language. I think he and, without hands, yeah. Also, I like very much, again I was quite lucky, Anthony Hecht. And I have obviously overlooked quite a lot of people, yeah, but speaking of the hunches, these are the hunches. Yeah. Quite a lot, actually, yeah. That's it? Okay, thank you. Oh, there's one, yeah.
Do you find, having left the Soviet Union, living in an English-speaking environment, lose sort of vitality in your Russian and it becomes more refined and more artificial? If you do, how do you sort that?
I honestly don't know. Because I'd say that I became much more careful in the choice of words I employ, both in writing and in the verbal communications. I'm watching myself, or all myself, to a greater degree, to a great extent. If in Russia, I had to worry about the substance of what I'm saying, presently I'm worrying about the way I'm putting things.